Something else that's new here inside Illustrator CS4 is the application bar, which I see running right across the top of the Illustrator interface. Now, on the Windows side, we have the menus as a part of the application bar. On the Mac side, the menus are at the very, very top of your screen. They are not a part of the application bar. And the application bar is something we're seeing inside all of the CS4 products. So in addition to the menus, at least here on the Windows side, I also have a button here to launch Adobe Bridge, and I have a button here to arrange my files. For example, I could decide to arrange my open documents side by side if I wanted to, or I could come back here and arrange them horizontally, something like this if I wanted to, or I could go all the way back to what's called Consolidate All, put them all back into these tabs that we saw earlier. Towards the right side of the application bar, I also have a workspace drop-down menu, so I can quickly change Illustrator's workspace if I wanted to. So, for example, I could choose like InDesign, and that's going to rearrange Illustrator's interface. You can see the palettes on the right-hand side, they spring to life. We haven't really talked about the palettes yet. We'll get to them in just a moment. Or I could pull down this drop-down menu at the top here, and I could say painting, for example, and that would rearrange things in a slightly different way. I'm going to go back to Essentials here, though. There we are. I also have my search field here up at the top. Now, how about those palettes sitting over on the right-hand side? Well, Illustrator is loaded full of palettes. I'm going to click on this little gray bar right at the very top there. That expands out my palettes here so I can see them on screen. Like I say, there's a whole bunch of palettes here available to us inside Illustrator. Just click on the tabs and that will open up the palettes. Some of the palettes show up completely empty. Others give us a few options. Now, some palettes you will use all the time. Other palettes you won't use very often. And you'll get a feel for the palettes as we go along here. But there are a few common properties related to all of the palettes. For example, every single palette has a palette menu way up in the top right corner. And some palette menus only have one single option, like my gradient palette here. Or I could go up to Color Guide, for example, expand him, and I get some more options. So if you're looking for additional options or additional commands when you're working inside your palettes, just look for that palette menu up at the top. As you saw a moment ago, my palettes were all collapsed. I could click back on this gray bar, collapse everything down, and now work in this sort of a view if I wanted to. It's completely up to you. Collapse things back down just by clicking on this double-headed arrow. That's how it works.